Hi, I'm Veronica and welcome to my channel. And today I would like to show you the first part of a two-part video with my favorite somatic movements. And these two versions are very good in my body to release tension from the entire pelvic area and also all along the spine and torso. You might need a pillow for this practice, depending on how is your body built, or you might not need it at all, and you just do it seated on the ground. So you will start from sitting on the heels. You're going to sit to one side of the heels and then keep moving the legs farther and farther away from one another until eventually you're going to get to the position where one leg is internally rotated, one leg is internally rotated, and one leg is externally rotated. And for me, this is comfortable to sit with both my sit bones directly on the ground, but obviously for you it might look very different. You might have one hip much higher up, you might have one knee high in the air, and that doesn't really matter at all. So long as you don't feel any pain in your knees. So you want to avoid a situation where this is really putting a pressure on your joints. You might need to experiment a little bit with how close those legs are towards you, how far away, and that might ease away the pressure. And if that still doesn't help, this is when you might want to be higher up and just lift your seat. But still stay in that position when you have one leg externally rotated and one leg internally rotated. So something that sometimes is called a Z seat or a deer in a yoga world. Okay, so this is the starting position. And from here, I'll show you the two or actually even three movements that I like to do. The first one is the pelvic tilt. So the movement is exactly the same as you might know already from that basic somatic move that you do when you have both legs in the same position. It's going to bring different sensations, very different sensations, just because your legs are in opposite orientations, right? So the movement really doesn't start from higher up in the spine, it starts from the pelvis itself. You know it's happening if you have your hands resting on those bones sticking out here in front. And if you tilt the pelvis forward, if there was like a ray of light coming out of these bones, they would be pointing, this ray would be pointing more downwards towards the floor when you rotate the pelvis forward. And because of this movement, there would be an arch in the spine, in the lower back as well. And then the opposite movement is when you're allowing the pelvis to tilt backwards. So again, if you imagine that there is a ray of light coming out of this bone in front, now it would be pointing more up towards the ceiling. And because the pelvis is moving, that will also affect the shape of the spine, which means that the spine would round in this position. So if I show it to you from sideways, it would be rounding and tilting the pelvis backward, tilting the pelvis forward with a little more arch in the lower back and chest reaching a little bit more forward. So you're allowing this movement to travel from the pelvis all the way up the spine, all the way to the neck and head, which means that if you are in that rounded shape, the head might be dropping towards the chest. And when you're in the arched shape, you might be looking up towards the ceiling. And the point here is to do it slowly and really paying attention to every moment. So if there is any tension within the pelvis area, in the legs, in the back, it will all show during this movement. So whenever you feel that there is a part that feels really tense or maybe even painful, slow down even more, catching the exact moment when you find a place that doesn't feel so great. And check if you could maybe move through the smaller range of movement. Slower, breathing to it. And it might be that if you keep going like this many times, so you could easily do it for 5 minutes continuously, or maybe even more, you might start feeling that this is becoming more and more comfortable, more and more smooth. So you're looking for this smoothness, the smoothness of this movement. If there's any part where you feel like you're overcoming a hurdle, some obstacle, almost as if there was like a hiccup, then slow down until it becomes more smooth. I like to add to that also swimming the pelvis movement, and that's when you don't only move forward and backward, but also combine it with the sideways movement and turning it into a full circle, kind of spinning plate movement, forward, side, back, and side. So if this does not feel very familiar for you, if you're not used to the spinning plate movement when you're lying on your back with the knees bent, and when the legs are in the same symmetrical position, then it might not be the best moment to learn it. It's better if you learn it in a more symmetrical shape. But if this is something that you can access, that you've done before, it's nice to try it as well when you are in this asymmetrical position of the legs. And here as well, depending on in which moment you are exactly, you might find some little bits of tension along the way. Okay. So also, if at any point you feel like your legs need a little break, you can straighten them, shake them out. Remember that this is always an option. Let's do the same thing on the other side. So you're swapping the legs, and again, it's the same thing. One leg externally rotated, one leg internally rotated, and you might need to adjust the legs. It's very possible that if you've never done this position before, you notice a huge difference between the sides. Maybe in one you were sitting quite comfortably and almost with both buttocks on the ground, and with the other you're like really struggling, one hip is much higher or anything like that. So this is quite normal, and you don't really need to worry about that, or there's nothing to fix. Let it be as it is, as I said, so long as it doesn't hurt your knees, this is perfectly fine. So once you find the comfortable seat, or comfortable enough seat, let's go through that first movement of the pelvic tilt. The pelvis tilting forward, which travels then up the spine. It creates the arch in the lower back, the chest moves forward, maybe even chin lifts a little bit. And then there's a pelvis tilting backward, which rounds the spine, and that's when your head can be dropping towards the floor. So keep going between these two. And again, it's not really about creating the biggest possible range of motion. It's about finding a smoothness, making it as smooth as possible. So whenever you start feeling that there's a lot of tension you find anywhere along the way, or maybe there is pain, it might take really quite a long time for you to get to the place where it becomes smoother. And you might want to do it day after day for quite a few minutes each time. It's just like a signal. Sometimes you might not even realize that something is brewing up, and you will start feeling it only when you do this movement. And you could add the breath to that, it always helps. So you might be, for example, breathing in when your chest reaches forward, breathing out when you're rounding the spine. So that when you synchronize the movement with the breath, it's even more soothing. It feels a little bit easier. It flows potentially more smoothly. And then that second movement is if you had the forward backward already, that movement of the pelvis. And there's also the sideways movement, a little bit more weight towards one sit bone, a little bit more weight towards the other sit bone. If you connect those 4 points, that will create this kind of spinning plate movement, the full circle of the pelvis. And it's really not your torso drawing a circle in the air, which would look like this. That's when my pelvis doesn't do anything, and I'm starting the movement somewhere from the lumbar spine. Now, I'm not talking about this movement at all. It's not really going to give you much feedback. It's the movement that really is about the pelvis. So you know it's happening if you feel that one hip bone is higher, then the other hip bone is higher. Both are forward, both are more backward. If this is moving, if those two bones, yes, are moving underneath your hands, then you know you're doing it. And of course, you can play with changing the direction. The slower you go, the more chance you have to feel those little moments when maybe it's not so smooth, finding those moments of hesitation, stumbling. Okay. If you need to stretch out the legs for a moment, this is a good moment. Stretch them out, release them. I hope that you enjoyed my favorite therapeutic somatic movement. For me personally, it works really well whenever I feel any tension building up in my lower back or in my psoas or anywhere within the buttocks area. It tends to release it quite nicely, but obviously your body can be different, and in your case, this might not be that amazing movement. So try it out for yourself. Let me know how it went. And if you are currently struggling with pain right now, additionally, I would like to invite you to download a free 7-minute long audio first aid for pain, which you can download for free from my website. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.